Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for connecting with us today. My name's Nick, and I'm with the Northwest Tri-County Intermediate Unit. And we wouldn't be able to have connections with professionals all across our Commonwealth, all across the country, matter of fact, if it wasn't for our partnership with the Northwest PA Job Connect. That's our local workforce development board. So a special shout out to them. Also, I want to share with all of our attendees, anybody that's connected, that somewhere on your screen, you're going to see like a little chat bubble with a question mark in there. We're going to be talking with Nick Andes. He's a professional engineer. And if you have any questions about something I said or maybe Nick had said, don't hesitate to fire a question at him anytime while we're talking. But we're going to guide Nick through some conversation, talking points about the path that he took that landed him at U.S. Steel in his role as a professional engineer or a plant reliability specialist, gas handling, and light oil recovery. Holy smokes, let's send Nick live so he can clear that up. So, Nick, thanks for connecting with us.
Hey, good afternoon.
So, Nick, why don't you tell us a little bit about that title? What the heck is a plant reliability? Go ahead.
Yeah, so that's a bit of a mouthful. Good afternoon, or good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Nick. So, as a plant reliability specialist, my background's in engineering, mechanical engineering to be precise, and a strategy for fixing machines and processes and industrial and manufacturing applications is called reliability centered maintenance. So I work for U.S. Steel in a steel mill, actually a coke plant down in Clairton, PA, which is in a river valley outside of Pittsburgh. And what that means is there's sort of two kinds of steelworkers we have here, to be really basic about it. And you have operators, or the people that operate the equipment, and then you have maintenance personnel. So the strategy we take today, it's called reliability centered maintenance. So all of the maintenance that we do on the machines, when we fix them when they break, when we go out and check on them periodically to make sure that they're doing okay, when we try new technological advancements to them, it's all designed to keep them running better, faster, harder, stronger, safer, more environmentally sustainable. And then the area in which I apply these principles is what we call gas handling and light oil recovery. So I work in a plant that takes coal and bakes it into coke. One second, I have a piece of coke here. This is a lump of coke, or metallurgical coke, as we say. Everybody says Coca-Cola, and that's not quite it. So if you take coal and you put it into a furnace at 1800 degrees Fahrenheit for about 18 hours, you get this. And this is a key ingredient in making iron, which goes on to make steel. So half of the plant makes these little gray rocks, and all the things in coal that aren't carbon, all the other organic compounds, we turn into gas. And then instead of emitting that gas to the atmosphere, we compress it and condense it, and then we run it through a cryogenic plant, and then we condense it again, and then we compress it again, and we take everything out of the gas stream that can be used to be sold. There's different chemical compounds in there, things like tar, like road tar. And then when you guys get a little bit further in your chemistry classes, there's a lot of enes. There's things like toluene, benzene, xylene, naphthalene, all chemicals that are critical for making all the little things that you really don't think about. Things like cosmetics and fertilizer and plastics and paper and electronics. So,
wow. So the plant at which you're working, you guys make a lot of coke. So let me break this down. Tell me if I'm wrong. You take coal, and you heat it up, and then it produces coke.
Yes.
And that coke is then used for what?
That coke we take down the river to our next plant, where you charge it into a blast furnace, which is a tower that you alternate dumping things like iron ore and coke and limestone in, and then you hit that with a very, very hot blast of hot air, and it takes iron ore, which are little pellets that we dig out. We dig iron out of the ground and roll it into pellets, and it turns it into elemental iron, which easy, I'd say common applications of iron that you guys would be familiar with would be like a cast iron stove, if there's an old black iron stove somewhere, or like a manhole cover, or like a storm drain grate. A lot of those are still made out of iron. It's more of a rusty color. And then we keep that iron in its liquid state, and we turn it into steel by blowing a bunch of oxygen through it.
Okay.
And that's where it gets some of its better properties, or we can turn it into pipe or flat rolled product. We roll it very thin. Like the kind of products we make are washing machines and automobiles and dishwashers and stoves. So if you've got Whirlpool or General Electric or Ford or those kind of things at home, we sell a lot of steel to those people. But I work in the very early side. You got to make this before you can make any of that.
Yeah, and that's I find fascinating. Rather than just heating up the coal to make coke and letting all that just blow up into the atmosphere, you guys are actually compressing all that essentially burn off and using that as a product to sell.
Absolutely. So what we collect light oil. So we handle the gas, and light oil is one of our products. So that's why it says light oil recovery. But after we've stripped all of the things that you can use out of the gas stream, it's a very clean fuel. So if you're ever in this side of the state, there are two big pipelines, pipes, 36-inch pipes that run up and down the valley, and so the fuel that we make is an extra, it's a bonus, it's a byproduct from reducing the coal. And then we take that and we burn it into blast furnaces. We burn it in reheating furnaces at the Irvin Works, which is our third plant in the valley. And we also burn it in a powerhouse to generate steam and electricity.
Wow. So it's come so long, so far from just burning coal for energy. You guys are using every component of that piece of coal.
Yeah, the Pittsburgh having a reputation as being the Smoky City, or even Western Pennsylvania being the cradle of industry around here. By the time it's all said and done, if you really want to, we say from rocks to docks, so starting at the mines with what we're digging out of the earth to what ends up on a shipping dock to our customers. Everything we do is recycled and cleaned more than a dozen times. We use every ounce that we can.
Yeah, we've seen if you have ever toured this is to our attendees, ever toured the Heinz History Center down in Pittsburgh, you see pictures of Pittsburgh as this layer of cloud of coal dust laid over. It's no longer like that. But Nick, let's shift gears for a little bit. Let's talk about your role as a professional engineer and your role as plant reliability specialist. What kind of, if anybody wanted to go into a role like this, what kind of interests and abilities do you have that makes you an essential asset for U.S. Steel?
Well, I didn't feel essential until this year, where we just kept working with everything going on in the world. But things that are important to being an engineer and succeeding as an engineer is obviously, so we like STEM programs, or science and math. So science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. But something I appreciate about the steel industry down here is that it's as much, you got to study your history, and you got to study your English, you got to study your communication skills, just as well as being able to do the harder subjects. So when we're looking for people that fit the right mold down here, especially like if I'm interviewing somebody that's going to join our team, we're looking for people. Attention to detail is an important thing. When you're looking at something, whether it's proofreading something or if you're checking a calculation, and it's the thoroughness with which you do your work, whatever kind of work that is, that's important. We look for people that are strong team players. We look for teamwork, communication skills. Creativity is important. We're working with a process that's we've been making Coke here since 1901 or 1908, and you think we would have it all figured out, but all the easy problems have been solved. So the time that we spend the time that we spend today is spent on we call them the top shelf problems. You got to stretch. There's no low hanging fruit anymore. You got to go for the hard problems. So that requires creativity, critical thinking skills, problem solving, all those typical buzzwords you hear when you're preparing for school or the workforce. Or
Well, Nick, what interested you in becoming an engineer?
I'd have to. I had members of my family. My father was an engineer, and my grandfather was an engineer, and my mother was a dentist. And she told me somehow she knew at an early age. She said, "Your hands are too big to be working inside somebody's mouth, so it looks like you're gonna have to go do something else." I said, "Okay," but science was always interesting to me. I won't say that math was always interesting. I was interested in. I knew that math was a necessary evil. I wasn't the best at math, but now that I've been practicing using mathematics for closer to 30 years now, I'm getting better at it. But I was always interested in how things worked, and being able to explain how things work, and more importantly, in this job, it's like when something breaks, being able to answer why. Well, why did it do that? So when a machine stop, a nice quiet break is when it just stops running and it won't turn back on again. There are times when it'll really break and it'll be leaking, or a part will break off and it'll be over here, and we're saying, wow, what really happened here? Because this is a big machine, and I don't understand how something like this could happen. So being able to figure that out and being able to identify ways to not let that happen again.
So is it fair to say that when you look at something, you think of the why or the how that works?
Exactly. We're the I tell people I talk about how I value creativity, but I always worry about how creative I am. So I like surrounding myself with idea people, because people always come up, oh, we could do this and this and this. I said, man, those are all great ideas. And then I'm the execution specialist. My two favorite questions are, why are you going to do it that way? Why are we going to go about solving the problem that way? And just how do you expect to do that? And so getting it from the concept, from the creative phase to actually making it reality is, and you're trying to do it in a way that, you don't have all the time in the world, and we don't have all the money in the world and all the resources in the world anymore. So doing it better, faster, stronger than the other guys is always it's one of our goals.
Sure. So walk us through, what are some of those hard skills? You touched on a little bit of the soft skills like communication, teamwork, but what are some of those hard skills that you have to have in your role? Is there computer skills? Are they pencil, paper? What are they?
So yeah, there's some basic computing. Like, we want you today. I mean, 9 months ago, all of us had to learn how to do stuff virtually. So being able to communicate and use, a lot of tools in Microsoft with Teams, and I'm leading training people on SharePoint. If you guys use SharePoint, that's part of the Teams thing. So being able to use a computer is important, because I guarantee throughout your career, whatever you're doing, you'll be using it in some fashion, whether it's to communicate or to actually, perform some analysis on what you're doing. It's a more powerful function. So being able to, I'd say, being an early adopter of technology. When something new comes along, my father was classic for struggling to adapt to technology. He worked in an industry that was not as, hard to adapt. So I guarantee that the world's going to continue to change. So be an early adopter of technology and learn how to make it work for you. And I can't stress enough the problem solving portion of this. It's important that engineers are always coming in for the STEM programs, and people say, oh, as important as it is to know your algebra and your geometry, which is important. These are all tools. And becoming a good critical thinker and being a good problem solver is looking at the situation, have the situation presented to you, and you can get from the start to the end, you can get to your solution and not your answer, and you know which tools you have and which ones to use to solve that.
Yeah, and you can learn all those tools in school, but the critical thinking component, that's sounds like something you've mastered. And yeah, you can't shy away from a problem. A problem is an opportunity.
Problem is an opportunity. It's, you know, saying when we work in maintenance, you know, if the operators weren't breaking machines, we'd all be out of a job.
That's right.
So, you know, we're looking for things to break down. Otherwise, this would be really boring and not nearly as exciting as it is.
So tell us a little bit about the pathway that you took education wise and your role. Does it require any form of formal education?
It does not require it does not require a college degree to be like an entry-level manager or supervisor at US Steel. It's highly encouraged, you know, get an associate's degree or a bachelor's of science or a bachelor's arts degree. And that's important to know, to not be, it's not an elitist thing. You don't need to be college. It doesn't need to be a college. Everybody feels the oppressive need to go, oh, I got to go to college and study something.
Yep.
But I mean, obviously there's a lot of skills that are learned in college that are directly applicable to our industry. But the thing I look for in someone who attended college, it's that you spent 4 years beyond, you know, what the state or what the country mandates you do in terms of education, and you tried to, you know, for 2 years or 4 years, or people can keep going. There's advanced degrees, 6 years, 8 years, 10 years. You went above and beyond to try to apply yourself to learning something new and something deeper, and you're able to follow through with it. Because if you know, being able to get through 2 years of a college program or 4 years of a college program, that is just the stretching warm up to make it through the 30, 35 year, 40-year career that you're signing up for.
So do you have a degree in mechanical, you said?
Yeah, so I went to Baldwin High School, which is a public high school outside of Pittsburgh. And I looked at a lot of schools, but I ended up going to the University of Pittsburgh. And while I was there, I studied mechanical engineering. After I graduated, this company was actually kind enough to pay for you to continue to go to school. So I pursued a graduate degree. I pursued a master's degree when US Steel was reimbursed me for it, which was a huge plus. There are employers that will pay you to continue to develop yourself professionally. And yeah, I spent my time studying mechanical engineering. So even for those people that are interested in going to college and going to studying engineering or one of the techs, it's all they are teaching. So all of them, whether you're an electrical engineer or a civil engineer or a computer engineer or an aerospace engineer or a nanotech engineer, they're teaching you to solve problems. Everybody's toolbox is just a little bit more specialized. So my office mate, who gave me some privacy so I could talk to you guys, same thing as me. I didn't meet him until I had this job. We went to the same high school where I went to Pitt. He went to trade school. He was an electrician, and he is the exact same job class as me, the exact same job rate as me, and he's working his way through his bachelor's program in electrical engineering. So he's my electrical left. I do the mechanical stuff, and he helps me out when the electrical stuff gets too hard. There's a lot of overlap.
Sure. So is it fair to say that a mechanical engineer, they're essentially designing and working on the mechanical aspects of how a machine works, whereas an electrical engineer, you guys have to work together to make sure the mechanical part doesn't get in the way of electrical part, and vice versa?
Yeah. So for example, if you have something like a pump, so the mechanical engineer, I tell people that are, and when I say, oh, mechanical engineering, and you watch their ears perk up. A lot of people think mechanical engineers are nuts and bolts, which is true. There's a lot of nuts and there's a lot of bolts, but mechanical engineering is really the study of heat and fluids. And a perfect example, so the start of my profession was the steam engine, and that revolutionized the way we transported people. And you could take some water and you can heat it up into steam, and then you can have that steam do some work for you. It can haul a bunch of freight, or you can heat a building. There's a lot of processes around here that are run with steam still. And then about a third of the way through the 20th century, that's when electricity became big. Same concept. You use steam or something to turn a generator that generates an electric field, and then you can take that electric potential and push it down, some transmission lines. You can heat a home and run an air conditioning unit or a pump or a steel mill or whatever you want. And, we generate 90% of our electricity here. We don't call up somebody to buy electricity. We generate it ourselves because we need a lot of it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Almost self-sufficient. So I want to shout out to our attendees. If you have any questions for Nick, we're going to be transitioning over to our Q&A here shortly. But Nick, why don't you tell us something interesting or fun that, somebody might say, wow, that really happened to you at, whether it's at US Steel or somewhere earlier on in your career?
Something interesting for my career.
Opportunity to go anywhere, meet anybody, anything cool?
Sure, I got something along those lines. So I was I was with US Steel, and then I went and worked for a couple other organizations for a couple of years, and I just started back with US Steel a year and a half ago, and which is a lesson in making sure grass isn't greener on the other side of the fence. I was a young man when I left, but the good news is, in the time that I wasn't here, I was thinking about the place, but I got to see a lot of different stuff and study in a lot of different places. So I was working for a steel manufacturer that made. So we actually make the steel here, but I was working for a place that made things out of steel, and the thing that we made were pipe supports, which was weird to tell people. We don't make pipes. Just the things that hold them up, which is like a very niche industry. So, whenever you walk into school and you pick up a pen or a binder clip or a pair of scissors, think about who makes that little weird thing and where it comes from. But when I was working with my pipe support company, I had the opportunity to work. It was the first time in my life I had an opportunity to work abroad, and I got to spend a good part of the summer in 2012 working in England, which was excellent. Believe it or not, it looks an awful lot like Western Pennsylvania, up outside of the major cities. Very, very nice place. And I also got to work in Thailand, which was also very interesting. The only drawback to Thailand is it's even though it's 2020, it's still the other side of the world. It'll take you a day and a half to get there. It's a long way away.
Wow.
So
let me ask you this. One of the questions we always get is, if anybody was interested, if you're talking to a 6th grader all the way up to an 11th or 12th grader, if you're interested in maybe pursuing a career in engineering, what kind of classes should they be particularly focusing on in high school to maybe explore whether or not engineering is for them?
So yeah, for starters, everybody thinks it's just it's science and math. But all of your courses in high school are important to me, or high school, middle school, because you're getting to the point where when people start talking to you, if you're looking at going to school or if you're looking at getting a job, the people that are interviewing you are always going to be interested in how you learn. So the more time you focus on learning, and even at that, I wasn't spending a lot of time thinking about how I was learning when I was entering high school, but it is important. And I think one of the most telling things is in high school, and if the curriculum hasn't changed that much, is that you will be you'll out of your 4 years, you'll be exposed to biology, and then you'll be exposed to chemistry, and then you'll be exposed to physics. And for those people that hold their nose and don't want to think about going to science or math class, I think you're actually let off the hook your senior year. I think only 3 years are required. But for those people that do want to study something in a technical field, that 4th year, you're going to have an opportunity to choose. You can do another year of biology, another year of chemistry or another year of physics, and pay attention your first time through those classes. See what you like and what you don't like. When I was taking, I couldn't stand biology. I have a terrible, my memory is no good. And we were forced to memorize things that I said, if I ever wanted to know this, I would look it up, and I write everything down.
Right.
Okay. But you know, the things I enjoyed physics, and I wish I would have paid more attention in chemistry, because there's an awful lot of I work in a chemical plant now, and there's an awful lot of chemistry required to make things like metallurgical coke and steel.
So tell us, you touched on this briefly, as a team member or even as an engineer, your English language arts, your speaking and listening, your writing, communication, is that applicable in your role?
Absolutely. I never know when I'm going to get called up and I have to put a Microsoft Teams presentation and a bunch of students I've never seen. Or we're regularly in our roles as engineers. It's not enough to just come up with the idea. When you're done coming up with the idea, you need to go sell the idea. And the nice thing about that is it sounds like a persuasive argument, but your argument gets a lot more compelling when you go in there backed up with facts, which engineers are typically armed with. You say, I know that this is going to run longer because it's made out of this material, and they did this extra thing to it, and I got the deluxe package on the mounting plate, and I know it's going to work this time. And then you go into a room and a guy says, well, it's going to cost us another $N,000 to buy that one. You say, listen now, but if we get this one, it's never going to break again. Yeah. Or, we were breaking this component, like we have components, things like pumps and motors, like we'll have a pump that breaks every month. And you say, we've never been able to fix it. There's nothing we can do. So you buy 12 pumps a year and you just change them out. Oh, if you can go out there and find out why they're breaking, and you only have to change that pump every 6 months or twice a year, that's a heck of a lot of savings. And that's when your bosses and the accountants and the financial analysis that work in your building here, like, you need to be able to convince them. Yeah. And you can't just show them the facts, because they won't understand what you're talking about when you're talking about pressures and temperatures and steel grades and gear ratios and all sorts of that stuff. So you got to be persuasive.
That's a great point. Yeah, just to back up your ideas in addition to the facts. So, Nick, I want to respect your time. We're closing in on a half an hour here. What would you say that if you had an audience in front of you of students who are about to transition into the post-secondary world, what would be some parting words or some advice you'd like to give them?
Advice? I don't know if I'm qualified for advice. Hey, try to appreciate school. Like, you really get presented a lot of things, and you get presented with a lot of different ideas, and the world is getting, I don't think the world's ever going to become less interesting or less complex. It'll continue to become more interesting and more complex because we're able to, it's easier to travel, it's easier to get around, it's easier to interface with people from different parts of the world and different walks of life using the technology that we got sitting on our desk now. I couldn't do this when I was in high school. This would have been, this would have been alien technology. But if you can't, I find it hard to believe that, say, I don't like school or this. Like, I find it hard to believe that there isn't something that you, whether it's math or English or music, art, like whatever it is you do, like, try to develop a sense of a lifelong student. Okay.
Yep.
And that'll bid you well. As an engineer, we call it, and I actually got this from my mother. My mom works as a dentist, and it's the practice of dentistry. Okay, she has a dental practice, a medical dentistry practice, and I want to say mom's been a dentist since before I was born. So about 40 years. I said, how'd you become a dentist? She goes, well, I've been practicing for the last 40 years. So for those of you that engaged in sports or the arts or music, how do you get well? You practice. So
that's great advice. That's great advice. Well, I want to say a special thank you to our participants for connecting, and also a special thanks to Nick for connecting. His time's very valuable, and he's busy cleaning up all that stuff that's coming out from the coal and the coke and stuff like that. So Nick, thank you for connecting. I also want to share that this session has been recorded, and we're also going to put it on our website. So please follow and check out the recordings tab on our website. And thanks again for connecting.
Thank you, guys.